All right, welcome back, folks. Is the first day of the second week. Or should I say, konnichiwa, MAKU desu. Irashaimase. Now, so something unexpected occurred yesterday. So it turns out that we get 3 days of super, right, after a 7-day streak. And that's well and good for someone like myself, right? I have necessarily no schedule limitations, right? I'm fairly flexible, I would say. Fairly flexible. So what we're going to do today is a little different. We're going to take advantage and swap up our little procedure just for the next 2 days of super. What I would suggest, in my opinion, is that when you hit these streaks, right? When you hit these streaks and you're given super, instead, I would call it a boost day. Maybe you can just call it a super day. But what I would do, in my opinion, if they're still going for the whole gamify thing, is to really knock on this. So what happens is you would get a bank of boost days. And when you hit a streak, you get 3 boosted days. And the reason why I suggest this personally over the way they're doing it now is that in a video game, for example, when you have the choice to when to use boost, as in the day you want to go hard, that's the farm day or the grind day, the day that you're hitting the farm, right? And if you, instead of having a mixed feeling, basically if the streak is unpredictable, because I couldn't tell when the streak is, maybe the alternative, we'll talk about the alternative, but it becomes a mixed thing. It's like, am I busy during these days, right? So what happens in a video game usually is it's a super attack, or like a bomb like attack, like a ultimate, right? An ultimate. That's kind of the same thing. So as someone with more flexibility, so what happens is when you give the choice, they will often, the individual will be intended. Like there's intent behind the day. And that often leads to a larger burst or a win-win situation. So that person will burst during this day and also have the intent of being mentally prepared. That's just my thought. This is usually how, and it's not even just a video game thing, it's the idea of being psychologically prepared. So you give boost day bank. So if they're already giving away 3 days of super, give 3 days of super and use a boost button, a boosted day button. When you break things up into like 111s, it would mean 3 separate occasions of coming back with intent, as opposed to 3 days. I mean, they probably considered this. If you do a 3-day thing, that's actually just one thing, because you have to continuously do the one thing. And this is a very strong mixed feeling, because this, when you do a 1-unit thing with 3 days, you elicit FOMO. And FOMO is why I'm going to change it up today. It's not negative to me about the FOMO, because I have a flexible schedule. However, if this lines up on a different day for someone else, like say in the middle of the week, FOMO is why gacha and live service games prey on. for better or for worse, the pragmatic thing is FOMO increases that push. Even if your application is educational, I don't necessarily think that's a rationale for using this design to really get someone to continue learning using FOMO. In this way, encourages someone psychologically to choose their day that they're going in with full time. So it's kind of like running for a while. And it's like, I need to time my mile. Okay, let's set one day and I'm going to give it all my all out there. That's kind of my thought about the boosted thing. Alternatively, if they want to keep the system of 3 days boost, I didn't see anywhere that said, hey, you're at day 4. If you do 3 more days, there's what I would call freemium on the way. So instead, that person will be at least look to see if they are ready to get their A game on. Luckily for me, it's not that different because I'm usually on my A or 90% game every day because I have already planned to do this every day. However, now, today, since we have this boost that you have no choice when it is, because you have to plan well in advance. Now, today, we're going to go 140% at least. Because today is super day. Today and tomorrow will be my super days. Just like how I'm planning on when to do the 2 weeks thing. When am I going to plan to do the 2 weeks thing? Even the 2 weeks thing. If I bought 2 weeks, honestly, I would just buy boost days. Just days of boost in exchange. Maybe at even a higher rate. So say like super, I don't know how much super is. Say it's $10. And that gives you 30 days. You can even do this way. This is a compromise. It's a monetization compromise. So say super is $10 a day. I don't actually know. You could upsell for the convenience, much like capitalism and all that, where you could say for $12 you can buy 30 boost days, right? Or I mean, I actually, due to the flexibility, I would say you could even do a markup of $15. So which one would I pick? What it does is it offers options, like educational options. And in fact, if you do boost days like this makes you more competitive, in my opinion. I've been looking around for like how models, like monetization models work for language. This makes it more flexible. And it breaks the whole subscription thing. So what happens is you get the one-off flexibility. So that's like banking, which there are very few apps out there or services because they prey on FOMO. What is this FOMO? Getting the most of your value, like buyer's value, right? So this is commitment. And it absolutely works. It really does work. That's why most people rely on this. But I think you could do one better in the way this is structured. If you upsell because of the convenience, right? Buyers will get to choose. Do I pay the upsell tax for a more flexible way, kind of like selling phone plans and all that, or you go this route, right? And that's kind of what I mean by boost. So now you would have 2 things. You have super subscription and you have boost. And that's how I would visualize video games in order to be more proactive, in my opinion. This whole boost thing encourages learners to be more proactive. Forcing them is great if they're having trouble. So I get the whole like FOMO, you can force things, and since this is an educational product, it's all right, right? So that can force them into consistency, and you can make the rationale like they're learning something, so that's okay. But generally speaking, if you force them into FOMO, right? FOMO, like video games, not all video games, just live service. This creates a habit. So we have to understand about habit formation. We're gonna do a 30-minute segment on this because it's a very important point. I am a person who plays live service games. I actually, Hearthstone, right, is turning 10 soon. Neverwinter is turning 11. And I've played PSO2, NGS, since its beta days. So this is going into their 3rd year. So these structures, I've been around town. I look at live service structures because these are the things that kids, younger adults, have to navigate when it comes to their life schedules, their life meetings, their balances. And then that same audience can be the same target audience for Duolingo. In fact, when it comes to video games, there is a strong pre-selection for Japanese influence. Outside of your Western fantasy, you know, like D&D, you have the other side of things. And these are very associated. So I would imagine English is probably number 1 when it comes to Duolingo. I remember looking at some statistics that they disclose themselves. English is the, you know, every other country, they usually select English, but I imagine Japanese is disproportionately a popular one. At least top 5. And that's usually because of a strong pre-selection online. Because the media and the entertainment is highly disproportionately represented by Japanese productions. So what I mean by disproportionate is the number of people to the products that come out. So when you compare like D&D, the scope of D&D includes, like, if you want to use the same conventional continent, it includes 2 continents of people. Meanwhile, there's a disproportionate amount of products coming out inspired by Japan due to the online communities. So when you think about it, this is a very big thing. One of the things that are hurting over time this type of predatorial FOMO with monetization and consistency, like forced consistency, has been on the downtrend because it has been determined to be a little malicious, right? It's toxic in the sense that when younger adults participate in this, they are ignorant of it. So they are naive, as in they're innocent of this. So when you prey on this too much, a lot of times later down the road, this is on the downtrend because it's not sustainable. Not sustainable. Ultimately, so many of the people growing up will fall into a habit that consumes and feeds on itself, consumes more and more time. And it's not because they want to do more and more time, it's because they fear not being there on time. And it's really up to the responsibility, in my opinion, of those who are ordering and disseminating and distributing the product. They have the most control here. And I understand it's a business model. So what I'm suggesting here is you can upsell something for the gain and convenience of the buyer, knowing that it may slightly decrease the overhead, right? Because like, for example, when you sell subs, right, 30-day subs, that 30-day sub is a lump sum, right? So that lump sum, regardless if they go 15 or 20, you have a better overhead, right? You have a higher value as a business model. So effectively, you can still, as I suggested, encourage proactive behavior by taking the average of the difference. So say if someone has a super sub, and you have, Duolingo has all these statistics. In fact, some of these statistics are displayed to the user because it's worth tracking their progress. So ultimately, the people at Duolingo will know how consistent the average person is. So if they wrap up all their bootstrap, they will probably get a figure, I would say average, in like half the days. If you bought a super subscription, at least half the days will have some activity. So you have an overhead of, say, if the value of 30 days is $10, it's really $5, right? So that's where I'm getting the idea. And not that I know any of this. I have no data for this. It's up to Duolingo and maybe the people who actually subscribe, because I'm not that person yet. Not yet. I don't know. This is my first sampling of this. You can upsell that $5 and offer the same amount of boost days. So what happens here is that $5 that you otherwise might have for that duration gets offloaded here, and the person feels like they always have value, because those value is based on a proactive choice. That's the crux of the OG video game experience. This is the OG video game experience. Because nowadays, I absolutely agree. Even game design, just a little digression into game design, even game design has made artificial challenges, I would say. So artificial challenges where timing and planning is kind of beyond the game, or beyond the player's control. And this is a different type of challenge. It's a different type of challenge for sure, right? The thing about this different type of challenge is, yes, this challenge raises certain aptitudes, raises certain skills in video games. Like, for example, even the slightest stuff, even the micro stuff, like dodging on time. That's the micro. The macro is, if I farm this much XP, where will I be in 20 days? It's not that extreme usually. It's like 2 days, right? So you build up resources, you build up currency. Where will I be? You have to manage that. These are different skills, absolutely. But here's my hot take here. This is a slight hot take. In my opinion, when you're thinking about video games, yes, it's a great place to have certain challenges where it forces you to time your opportunities and all that stuff. In a learning application, learning, again, I sound like a broken record, is a life skill. All right? It's a life skill. When you, in my opinion, when an education app feeds on this type of challenge, they already have that challenge. These kids don't necessarily need to develop those things because they are doing it all the time in life. They still have to plan stuff. They still have to find time that they can't control yet, that they can't control yet, to best play games. So this translates to best time to learn and maximize gains. That includes Duolingo. So, and then we're just talking about kids right now because that's my, around 18, right? 18 to 23 years old. Let's just say, like, I don't really focus too much on very successful adults. So usually 25 plus, if they're doing well, they're just usually doing well, right? Now, but let's just go to that. Even at 25 plus, say adults, right? Adult plus. Same thing. Plan stuff, jobs, family. There's just so many things that typically, it can be challenging in the actual games, like in a context specific associated level of challenging time management, opportunities, and whatnot. This is an educational product. This will only teach them to abandon and create flexibility around your app, your education. That sidelines a lot of their activities. And what it does is, in my opinion, it sidelines life skills for learning, which is okay because that's kind of the objective of Duolingo, right? However, those people will start doing the same things that I feel live service games unintentionally, because of their model and how to get people retention, not necessarily maliciously, condition people to be poor prioritizers. And what I mean by that is sleeping, eating, touching grass. And I don't think that's where, I don't think that's the vision, in my opinion, that I get from the people behind Duolingo. So my take is that to make someone, you still can get your value. So like $15, right? Or 30 boosted days. This is like your banked boosted days, or $10. These are all made up values. We're just talking about the relative proportions, right? This is a 33% markup. So when someone who's not very great, who's not too concerned with math, right? When you're thinking about your kids and people who take a glance, they will see the 33%. Or technically the 50% markup. But the idea is they will see 30 days for $15. That doesn't seem too great if I can get 30 days for $10. So from the business perspective, it still has the same effect, right? For those who are going to buy the 30 days anyways, they will continue to think this is a great value, or this is a value that fits them. What this does is it offers an additional option for those like me, or even those who are learning language that need something more flexible, right? I would buy the convenience because you'll highlight that this can be used whenever in 24-hour periods. So when you boost a day, is the next 24 hours. Boost a day. So now what this, in my opinion, those who continue to learn the way they do, they still have that model. It still goes on. It like there's an event, there's a pro and cons to this too. If you do this, it means commitment, right? When you sub to something, you are not only committing to getting the maximum value, you are committing to learning. And that's kind of nice. That's kind of nice. It works that way. If you're a person who is lacking commitment, right? Lacking commitment, and say, I can't try, I'm not going to try to maximize 30 days. That's kind of tough, but you can use it to learn how to commit. That's great. And then you have people who don't have commitment issues. They have scheduling issues, right? So when they see this, what they're going to see is loss in value already, right? So for me, if you offer this, this will add to your revenue. And what happens is it can also enrich or proactive decision making. And I am a sucker for proactive decision making. When you decide and prepare when to learn, this is a different skill than forcing commitment. So these are two different skills. So let's go even meta to this, right? Because I want to add all my thoughts right here. So even more committed to this is you as the developer can say, hey, how about a challenge? Consider pledging 30 days straight and maximizing 30 days. Or, hey, we noticed that you are only active for 10 of the 30 days, right? 10 out of 30 days. Perhaps you would consider our boosted day plan where you buy 30 days because it best matches you. And what happens here is the organization, Duolingo, as a business and also an educational product, right? As a business and an educational product, you have become proactive in promoting someone's ideal way of learning, right? And then on top of that, if you want to go even further meta, you could do encouraging things and also introduce new ideas where say, hey, we notice you boost it all the time, right? Have you tried consecutive things? And you don't really need to do this. The reason why it's biased towards boosted days is because remember, they already whoops, I didn't mean to do that. They already have the streak system. So you don't need subs. You don't need to emphasize the commitment issue because streaking already reinforces what I refer to as combo gaming. Streaking is already combo game heavy. So now the idea is, how do you maximize retention and also give the agency to the player? Boosted days, it's on top of that. And the reason why boosted days may even work in this extent is because you also have freeze days. I saw the freeze mechanic. It's 2-day grace period. You can sort of low-key monetize that too, because if people have commitment days, commitment issues, freeze behind a slight wall still forces commitment, However, in this case, they get to choose what their level of their commitment. So this creates flexibility, in my opinion. It's a balance. I know like the whole M word is very stigmatized. The idea is it doesn't have to be associated with negativity and being uncontrolled. I think one of the major flaws, or major sentimental flaws, so we're talking about emotional flaws of the current live service models, is aggression and guilt associated with uncontrolled FOMO. Not FOMO strictly itself. It's the feeling of uncontrolled FOMO. So many of the live service games that are ahead of the game, in my opinion, for lack of a better word, and all puns intended, ahead of the game now are those who alleviate this feeling of uncontrolled. So for example, there's a 1-year cycle of things that are missed. So if you missed it the first year, wait another year, it's going to come back, right? So the timing, even if it's an uncontrolled timing, there's another opportunity. And I'm sure the streak thing will give more freemiums, as I call them, freemiums along the way. I don't know when that is, right? So I probably could go on the internet and look. Like I can look at other people and they can tell me, because I already know there's one at 50, I think, maybe. It still means that I have some semblance of control. It's still more than being blindsided, right? And in this case, Duolingo does not get you ready for that. So even as a compromise with the current system, give advance notice. And I feel so far lots of things are done so well. Like, oh hey, you made some mistakes, here's a reminder. Hey, you know, we're really deep into unit 2, do you want to review unit 1? It goes with monetization too. Monetization, right? What the habits are being formed by monetization. And I actually think it would be great. It might be a little bit off-putting at first because for the most part, the casual person will only see this. And obviously Duolingo might branch into mathematics or economics and stuff or something like that. But yes, in the end of the day, if someone isn't thinking very carefully, they see $15 for 30 days and $10 for 30 days. That's absolutely fine, in my opinion, because you are already promoting this with streaking. You have streaks, combo games. The people who think $10 for 30 days straight, consecutive, will continue to believe that's the best value. So it doesn't necessarily remove or negate their opinions. What you can choose to do though, and the power is in the developers, they can show them using Duo, you know, the cute little bird that suggests, hey, if we notice that you only do a third, 30% of the days, right? You're only on for 10 of the 30 days that you're buying. We have another thing that ultimately you will probably get more value out of because all 30 days are on days that you choose. And you will literally buy those 30 days. Alternatively, if you find the opposite is true, you know, there's are clever ways to support that. But the streaking thing, you don't need to do the opposite. Like, there's so many forests supporting FOMO and streaking already. It's not necessary. But this little option, I would go as high as $12 if this is $10 for 30 days. I would go as high as $12. It will be, you will be able to use it as a learning tool because you're an educational application. It will empower the person. And in my opinion, there are at least, I would say, 3 to 4 pillars that I personally, for myself, that of learning. And most of these 3 or 4 pillars do not do with semantics or the actual intended goal that most people would say. Like, your intended goal is to learn Japanese, learn its rich culture in their language and all that stuff. But learning, the aspect of learning, requires 3 or 4 pillars. I touch upon most of these, at least in my opinion. One of them is intended active learning. So being having the intention to learn and being active in that learning. So if you're removing when someone needs to study, or like, for example, school kids, right? School kids, a lot of times they don't get to choose when to learn, but they're kids. So we're talking about less than 18 now. And that's not really my target group. But in this case, it's kind of necessary because they have no point of reference, as in, like, there's no choice making. Oftentimes, this works on exposure, right? You expose kids to particular things and they learn those things. However, when you're getting older and you have a really popular app that has a huge range of people, the older these kids are, the more likely that they're going to become reliant on force, as in, like, obligation. And this is what I mean by for a lot of people, when they pass 18, they really stop learning. And what I mean by stop learning how they learn or why they learn. This is the true life skill, in my opinion. As long as you know how you best learn, the context, like Japanese, the context will fill in for itself. When you leave high school, there is less and less obligation. Not even college is a thing now. I was part of the millennial generation. College was almost not optional, so most people went to college. So when they stop learning, the problem here is that they no longer want to learn anymore. They become in a habit. If things are forced on you and it becomes negative, it's fine usually when you're younger because you have no point of reference. But when push comes to shove, when you get older, you can still learn things, but the learning process has not been developed. So now you're going into younger adults, which is my major area of interaction. So let's say greater than 15, maybe to the up of 25, right? These are the adults that now have to find motivation, self-awareness, professional identity, right? Still improve efficiency in problem solving, which that involves learning, problem solving, and critical thinking. All of these feed into if they're making decisions, how they're making decisions. So why is this important is that when a person gets older and you remove the choice of intent, they're no longer actively doing any of these things, right? So if you buy a 30-day sub, the goal now is pragmatic. It's mechanical. Like, I spent $10 on 30 days. How do I get the most value? I play, quote unquote, play or learn as much as I can there. That's great if you're still less than 18 and learning the same way. So what happens if you buy something? This is the most fundamental, very effective strategy. When you buy something, you're naturally going to want to maximize it because it's already gone. Your money is already gone. And the only way you get the value is to do it. And that's so awesome. It's usually very great for less than 18, but ultimately, this is a high barrier. As you're older now, you have time management skills that need work, right? This doesn't help. 30-day sub, time management goes out the window. This is just, you're putting forth, you've restricted the person to being flexible with time management. That's not healthy for learning, in my opinion. It really isn't. Because you're going to be learning when you feel awful. You're going to be learning, like, because people can be in bad moods, right? People can get sick. They can feel really great, but feeling really great doesn't mean they're going to choose to learn, right? They don't usually choose to learn. If they're not choosing when and where and how to learn because you've imparted a time limit, they no longer practice that skill. They're not practicing, hey, I feel great today. Should I go on Duolingo? Hit that day boost button, right? I'm feeling like 300% today. Let's go. Let's boost this day for the 24-day hour and let's slam progress, right? So what happens, like video games, like in the video games, the person now knows when they learn best. And then they will continue to build on their best days just as much as they know when to rest. So when they have bad days and sick days, they'll realize, maybe not today. Maybe not today. I should go out. And yes, there are trade-offs. So we're talking about someone who can make decisions or should practice decisions. When you're a kid, it makes sense because a kid will generally, human condition would say, choose the path of less resistance, right? So oftentimes, yes, that little like model, and I think this is also one of the criticisms by like adult speakers and experts. You can make your thing look kid friendly. Like, I love the animations. I'm 36 years old and I love these cute animations. They're brimming with personality, but the design is also kind of kid forward and not all ages forward. So it's still promoting that idea that adults just don't learn language. However, you can encourage that by creating a more flexible plan that meets older people and younger people. So the sub thing, that's pretty great for kids. That's pretty great for kids. Like, you want your kid to learn in a fun way and they go to school, but they always have free time after school. 30 days. You got it. You got it. Right? That's what you got. But as an adult, how would you get over not being present for 30 days? That reinforces a negativity. What is associated with missing 30 days? Sometimes it gets reinforced, and that's the fallout of FOMO. And live service has been hit pretty hard with this. Live service has been hit pretty hard with this, which is the idea that when you only get low value, right, 10 days, you could only play 10 days, it's my fault. It's my fault. I didn't maximize value, right? So maybe they'll say, all right, next 30 days, I'll nail it this time. I'll try to do better. Still my fault. Well, really, psychologically, this just becomes a feedback loop. The idea is that it's never your fault, because expecting yourself to go 30 days straight to maximize the value, that gives this lofty goal that you want to go 24 hours for 30 days. And what happens over time is normalizing. Rest is optional. Eating is optional. That's one of the pitfalls of live service video games. Even adults, even people who aren't into video games feel this. So oftentimes when you juxtapose it to 30 boost days, which are any days you can boost for 30 days, even with an upsell of 30% cost, it still gives the option that, hey, we love streaking. We love your streaking, your combo gaming, your Instagram chat. But what is the one thing that is destroying people's lives, arguably destroying people's without their knowledge? The danger is not, they're not choosing for that. They're being conditioned for that. So social media keeps you locked into social media. You're an education person. So education is not necessarily obligation to, I mean, the vanity stuff, right? Envy and stuff, that's an interesting topic. That's a different branch of what we're going with here. So oftentimes envy is not the subject of learning. However, that's an interesting topic, like social media at large, but we're gonna keep it to learning, promoting people's learning skills. You would like to redesign the UI? I think the UI is perfectly functional. That was not the point I was making. I actually like these little cute things, but if they wanted to work on customization, that's fair. That's another topic. Customization can be a problem for identity. So while customization is great, it's not necessarily the most win-win situation, but we're not going to talk about that one. This would be the default, sure, if users doesn't know the theme and you can customize. Yeah, that's fair. That's one of those like pluses where like, here's a good feature and whatnot, but you need like money, time, and also when you do customization, you sacrifice brand recognition. There are a lot of things that it's not a win-win for both sides. Like if Duolingo offers more customization, it becomes blended to other applications, so it will no longer stand distinct in people's minds. At the cost, other people can customize their thing, but their education system, it's an education system. So when you're getting it's a balance act. It's just like what I mean by, don't get rid of 30-day subs, add 30-day boost days. This promotes choice, but if you're given too much choice, it distracts the person as well. So one of the downsides is it's a balancing act, being able to encourage both things, not one or the other. So when you go really hard with customization, you become very comforting. Like you become comforted. You get used to the things. Well, let's give an example of Uromaji for Japanese. It's customizations like this. If you can customize, you will pick the most comforting expected thing. Well, we know that learning also comes with discomfort. And yes, it's a balance. Maybe a little bit of customization here and there might be great. When you allow customization, a developer loses their vision. So in education, you offer some choices, right? Some choices that promote learning, but you don't necessarily offer too much comfort. What too much comfort does is it makes people complacent. And when it's complacent, they don't learn as much. Learning goes down. And the great example of this is romaji. So romaji can be inhibiting to kana if you get the choice of comfort. So most people's advice, which I disagree with, is to remove romaji right away to learn kana. Alright, can you add me on Duolingo? Sure. I'll get you once I end today's stream. I usually mutual the person. Someone followed me already, so after the podcast. Milo. Or Milo. So to wrap this up, because I only wanted to keep it to an hour. I've been doing these like start of the day opinions because I've been immersed in not necessarily Japanese. I've been immersed in the learning. So most of these comments are about learning first. Is always about learning first. Learning is one of the life skills. And all the design cues and things I think about is promoting learning. And largely learning when it's not so obvious anymore. So learning younger than 18, it's usually obligatory. All internationally, right? Yeah, high school, middle school, all those things are usually obligatory for the most part. So we're not necessarily concerned without this. Duolingo is a choice. It's an app that is optional, and you're trying to get in to supplement and complement the desire to learn a language or other things, because I see that Duolingo might be branching even more than that. We're talking about people who leave the obligation most of the time. We're going to say the vast majority in the world, when they're less than 18, is obligatory because they have parents, family, and stuff. So now we're talking about 18 plus when they're reaching adulthood. And oftentimes I talk about this in the context of language, because a lot of times people say adults have trouble learning like when they were younger. And this is what I'm trying, this is my focus. And that's why I'm talking about boosted days. Boosted days. You keep looking at things like trees, they have branches. Yes. Yes. The idea is boosted days will allow even the younger people who are transitioning into the adults, and remember that Duolingo is a business as well. And the business comes from actually somewhat this age, because decision making for the stuff is towards, if it's a young kid, it's actually the adult making the decision to pay for Duolingo, right? So you're trying to give the adult the choice in decision making for either someone they know or themselves. And adults have trouble learning, in many have quote unquote different obstacles to learning. And one of the obstacles is this 30-day sub. The idea of being consecutive. It's awesome when you can, and it's super appealing to younger, like the younger you get, it's a lot more appealing. I think Duolingo can do both. If you're an education forward person, you can do both. And the idea is you're trying to encourage kids when they transition into adulthood to make proactive decisions decisions about their education, about their learning. So what makes video games incredibly rewarding a lot of times, especially now, is that if you give the agency to the kid, they also gain ownership of their decisions. And as an educational product, you can encourage them to say, hey, you know, we noticed something. You're not quite very great at combo gaming, like being consistent or finding 10 days in a day. How about, so I talked about this in many other forms, where if someone works well 1 hour, right, straight, then take breaks, like 15 minutes, versus someone who does 15-minute sessions with 1-minute breaks, right? Times 4, that's 1 hour of sessions with brief breaks. Now, if you expand that to learning language, now we're talking about days, right? And all of this stuff can be mirrored in like physical activity as well, like fitness, right? And the idea is, as an education or self-improvement tool or what have you, all these things, the idea is to promote the most flexibility so that when you go into adults, learning is not troubled by the things that are uncontrolled. And if you have a product that feeds on that uncontrolled, they usually end up suffering in learning. And that product, the retention of that person over time, the older you get, the more likely they're going to drop the product. So it's very effective for younger people. It becomes less and less effective as they grow older. So yeah, you can turn over, that's cool and whatnot. Honestly though, education products, in my opinion, are for life. So I actually think Duolingo peeps are so in the game for this, and I think they can do one up. They can get a kid who starts with Duolingo at like 16 or maybe 15, get them past all the way to adulthood, and still promote great decision making and proactiveness where it transitions their learning abilities too. Because I really want to like the idea that educational products also promote how to learn, and adults just don't learn the same way anymore. There's other facets, but we're specifically today focused on the commitment of time, the feeling of commitment of time, how much it costs, that kind of thing. The other side of things on how to learn deals with like motivation, self-awareness, identity, cognitive interference, all those topics. I say quite a lot about that when it occurs, but today, this model, when I hit 7 streaks, so I hit the week streak yesterday, and I thought I'm going to get 3 days, and then when I clicked on that button, there's no like, oh, when I want to do the 3 days, because ultimately I would probably have chosen 3 days back to back that I could plan around and maximize that. However, it just starts. Luckily for me, I've already planned this for 30 days straight. So I'm already committed even before expecting to buy a sub or anything like that. But today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double down. So the next 2 days, I'm double downing. And I can do this because I have a flexible schedule. I would say the vast majority of people would be blindsided by the idea like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. Like, I'm kind of busy. It's the middle of the week, or something's bound to happen, right? So it's not your agency. And it often leaves a negative impression. And negative impression psychologically associates with services. So if your first impression about Super is a negative one, they are less and less. A person will associate like, if I can't do it for 3 days straight, what are the chances I'm going to do it for 30 days straight for $10? So now they have to reevaluate. They have to reevaluate, right? How much is $10? I'm still assuming it's $10. I have no idea. I haven't ever clicked on the super button yet. So how much is $10 in 30 days? And that's usually the question they're asking. Obviously, for me, someone who is incredibly flexible and always maximize the day they're ready, I get more value if I can choose those 30 days. And what happens is you don't lose anything here, once again, because of streaking. So yes, this would be a foregone conclusion if anyone who's streaking loves Duolingo, and naturally it would, this would be a very logical connection. If you're already playing every day, then having super every day is pretty good, right? They still have freeze mechanic, which honestly I would call it rest mechanic. So I would probably, instead of calling it a freeze, which is you freeze streak, I get it, the whole fire thing and freeze, I would call it rested days. And you can probably make this into a currency, rested day currency. So this is where you can offset the fallout or the withdrawal symptom, the psychological withdrawal symptom of FOMO. So you can navigate rested days in order to take advantage of boosted days. That gives you two models. Those two models make your education product and your learning product highly dynamic, or far more dynamic. And that underlies if your true goal is to get people to learn, right? And the idea of being more flexible is it increases retention. It doesn't increase frequency though. It will probably, frequency will get a hit, as in overall you will probably see a noticeable decrease in how consecutive people are, because those who relied on being consecutive, like streaking and stuff, may move to a model that's up and down. But if you're worried about funding, I can assure you that I would be willing to take a bet. If you have this type of markup, your revenue wouldn't necessarily go down. It might actually slightly tick up. The idea is though, it's not about the revenue, right? Now, overall, I would say the overall satisfaction will go up, and that's investing forward in people. So in the long run, people will stay with your product, continue learning at the pace they want as they're growing older, right? The older they get, they will start finding out, you know, when I was 15, this was great. 3 years later, like I have jobs, like I gotta go to college, like I really want to keep doing this. I love this so much, but I can't keep up, right? I can't. That FOMO is just a negative reinforcement now. It's interfering. I have more important things, and your thing drops. If obviously if the developers said, nah, we're okay, we are okay, and we're really targeting 18 and younger, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. Because if they communicate their goals, I'm not offering unsolicited advice. This is just my take on things. I'm not like going to them and say, hey, you told me this app is made for all ages. They don't really actually give me that impression. Actually, for the most part, I actually think they're going for like 23 and younger a lot of times. 23 at the top end, like really top end. When maybe they're still commuting to college and they're living with their family and stuff. At the top end, 23. But I would say after high school, so 17 or 18, that's when Duolingo will appear kiddish in design and appeal. And the appeal does seem like starting. So I'm not saying they're suggesting that this product is for life, right? The idea here is there is a chance that learning language, when they continue to expand the units, it may actually take longer. So they need designs. In my opinion, it's encouraged, not necessarily required. They need designs that might have to retain up to 18 to 23. Because in my opinion, language, in contrast to all the people, like all the hustle culture of the internet, right? The hustle culture, learn, become fluent in 1 year. As much as that is really wonderful and that idea is very romantic and whatnot, I would say realistically, if you started at 17 with your proper motivations and stuff and juggling school, you're gonna bridge at least 17 to 21 by the time you cover your units, as is now. Like right now, juggling realistically, having all the psychological and social events that happen between this age group, 4 years. I would say if you look at YouTube videos, a reasonable place is someone that says they've done this for at least 3 years. And it's like, oh, here's my take on Duolingo for 3 years. And what they're going to cover is a lot of things that goes into this age bracket. So minus the hustle culture of the 1 year thing, I think it is kind of healthy to maybe keep in mind that having options as someone is older can branch out your product. So that's just my thing, you know. Being proactive about time management, owning your learning, when to learn, that's a great way to encourage things. And that's what the super thing made me think about all last evening when I was talking and chatting about learning and time management and stuff with some of my friends. That's kind of what it came up with. So, you want to learn German? Hello, what are you currently doing? Are you learning something right now? And thanks, Zena, for the share. Yeah, customization can make it feel a little bit welcoming, I would say, Zena. Just not too much customizing. It's always a balance. But it is nice if you add a little of your own flair. For myself, when you're asking for my take, Zena, I like living in other people's worlds. I can always create my own world. So as an older person, it's not as interesting to know what I like. So it's not the same for younger people or other people. For myself, as I grow older, it's less interesting to think about how I would create something in my image. I want someone to show me how they create things, and I want to learn everything that they have designed. So yes, I'm making constructive criticisms about Duolingo in their language. So like I'm trying to get into the mindset of the developers of Duolingo, embody whatever they're doing, and offering constructive criticism. Because if I were thinking about making a language app, I didn't think about it. So I don't have the infrastructure or anything. Using Duolingo is what caused this constructive criticism, right? So my take on customization is that for me personally, so this is just my personal take, it's a moot point for me. I want to learn what other people are doing, what they think is the proper way to design things. If I go and make my own language app, then it will be the customization that I've always looked for. So oftentimes, as I'm older and I get older, I have a lot of experience. So when it comes to customization, it's less and less interesting because I can already imagine what my app will look like. But what is colorful, just as a way to end on a positive note. What is colorful about life as you grow older is discovering new things. I spent 36 years, and most of those years, I would say 37 years of my life, in my own head. It's there. I live with it all the time. So that's perfectly fine, and I live with it every day. It's not as interesting as discovering new things that are made by other people. And that's largely why I disagree, or I can't resonate, basically. I can't resonate with adults very well. What I mean by that is I can't resonate with adults that think they have trouble learning, discovering new things, constantly educating themselves, and always exposing themselves to things they may or may not like. I immerse in people's products. That's how I continue to stay younger in mind and body, because I constantly want to be in other people's worlds, get their perspective, learn from their perspective, and teach them something else. So I invest forward. All the ideas that Duolingo has, I want to take that, meld it with everything I have, and then invest forward. Use these ideas maybe. So when someone asks me, I want to learn Japanese, I would ask them a bunch of questions, like 10 to 20 questions. Since I immerse myself in a lot of learning products, I can at least offer them the most appropriate one that I think at the moment. So I'm no longer bound by what I want things to look like. So as much as in this day and age where you get to customize a lot of things and whatnot, and I say that promoting choice can help kids and young adults make decisions of their own, I'm no longer in that same age segment. I'm 30 plus. I'm 36 years old, and as restrictive as possible, that's why I have no problems with the 30-day thing, is that I can adapt to all those things. I want to adapt to all those things. It's not as interesting and fun for a product to not force me to do something anymore. I want to learn. When you are not forced to go out of your comfort zone, and you're not forced to like or find charm in a design that is not your own, you stop learning. You're actually just practicing and studying, really. So you're studying yourself, and you're practicing the way you have always practiced. And that's kind of the idea. Not for me. The younger you get, it's nice to have an element of your own personality in it, because you're still in a period of self-discovery, a period of self-awareness. So if you're anywhere in that stage of life, which is as you roll back, so 25 and younger, people are still in their state of mind that they want to discover what is pleasing to them. Ultimately, I do that every once in a while, but most of the time I'm discovering what other people have to offer to me. So this is why Duolingo is fantastic for this exercise, because it's free. This is what's offered to me, and I can extract things that work and extract things that don't work for myself, and also take everything and see if it works for others. At least that's the intent. So just to wrap up in that, why I go into this, I guess a lot of people call these like pseudo TED Talks, but I love doing this because that's my passion. I just love talking about trying to guess what developers do, what creators want to do, and then add my own spin to it. But I don't want to make the product. If I wanted to make the product, I would start my own competing language app, right? These guys deserve a lot of credit for making this product. and I want to encourage it to be even more, right? You're learning Germany. You're learning German to move to Germany because it has better economy than where you're from, right? Which my dad realized. I'm under 18. I'm motivated because my dad spent 9 months the whole summer in the housing learning German. Oh, that's cute. So it's more of a family exercise now. That's awesome. Because I'm starting school in Germany in 5 months. I want to learn German because I will need it every day. I see. You're in Croatia. Okay. I see. Your dad and you, that sounds really cute. Milo. Like, a family activity, that's super powerful. That I didn't even go into that yet. I think I mentioned it about day 4 or day 5, but having support system. Oh, we talked about this yesterday with someone who didn't have family support. So I met someone yesterday, and I had a digression. It was about an hour long. I have a digression yesterday with someone else that did not have support. So they actually stopped learning because the people around them was discouraging. And I offered my 2 cents about how to turn that around, or how to use that as a way to offer like a pragmatic counter argument with sentimental feelings, right? Pragmatic counter argument. And I hope that person continues to find things that work for them, right? And I was sharing my story about tiger moms and being in conflict of interest. You know, if you're into economy, that phrase conflict of interest comes up quite a bit. So it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely to hear that you are inspired and motivated by your father, and your father and you have aligned interests instead of a conflict of interest. That's very adorable. And good luck in Germany in 5 months. Have you started already? You say you want to learn German, so how are you planning on starting your journey? All right, so we're wrapping up this section. All right. That's what I wanted to say today. And now we're going to start the super day.